Hello and welcome. In this video we will talk about how to write about parts of the total. Now at the screen you can see a pie chart, and this type of visual is very common in writing task 1 IELTS academic. So our task when we're dealing with a pie chart like this is to describe pieces of the pie chart, or parts of the pie chart. And today we will learn how to do this. So pie charts always represent 100% or the total. But pie chart is not the only way to talk about parts of something. Another possible way is to use a bar chart. Here you can see a bar chart, and in this case it also represents 100%. But bar charts do not necessarily present exactly 100%, so always analyze the graph. So we will talk about these two graphs, the pie chart and the bar graph, to learn how to describe parts of the total. First of all, how do we call these parts? There are a few ways to do this. So we can call them a portion, a proportion, percentage, share, majority, or minority. And of course we can mention a specific number like this, 10%, or you can write it with a symbol. Please do not say 10%. That would be a mistake. Parts or portions can be very large, like here in case of USA, and quite insignificant, like here, for example, it's only 2%. What I'm saying is that we can describe what kind of a part we're dealing with, and for that we can use these words in green. Significant for large proportions, for example, here USA is a significant proportion, it's 31%. Insignificant proportion is the opposite of significant. For example, Mexico, it's only 2.2% compared to very large pieces. Here, we can say that it's insignificant. Considerable and inconsiderable is the same as significant and insignificant. Just another way to put this. We can use the word major. Again, USA is the major proportion here. We can say large or small, and if we're talking about very insignificant numbers, we can use the word mere. In our case, probably South Africa, which accounted for 1.4%, would be a mere number, a mere proportion. So now at the screen you can see several variations, several options of combining these two sets of words. For example, we can say a significant percentage, a large proportion, a mere 2%, a small share of 10%, a major portion, or a tiny percentage. Next, let's talk about numbers and how we can present numbers. So what numbers are we talking about here? Well, here you are, 44%, 17%, 16.4%, you got it. Well, if we are talking about 10%, we can say a tenth, or we can say 1/10. Another option is to say 1 out of 10 people, women, men, cars, and so on. That's a very good way. 1 out of 10. If we're talking about 25%, this is a quarter, or 1 out of 4. Alternatively, you can say 1 in 4. 33% is a third, or 1/3, or 1 out of 3 students, women, employees. 50% is half, or 1 out of 2. And finally, 75% would be 3/4, or 3 out of 4. We can use the words of approximation. They are very handy. We can use them in any type of visual, so please learn them if you haven't yet. How can we use them when we talk about parts of the total? Well, that's very easy. For example, if we're talking about 35%, we can say that this is roughly 1/3. 52% would be slightly more than half. 49% would be roughly half. 11% is approximately a tenth. 27% is nearly a quarter. And 24% is almost 1/4. So for example, USA, 31%, we can say that it's approximately 1/3. In case with, let's say China, 23.4%, this is roughly 1/4. So when we present numbers, we also have a variety of options. Thus, we can show the flexibility of our language and our lexical resource. Finally, I would like to talk to you about these verbs over here. All the examples are made about food and green. Now, what is food and green? So in this graph over here, we are dealing with municipal solid waste. So the charts show the breakdown of municipal solid waste generated worldwide. Municipal solid waste is basically garbage that all of us produce. And there are main types of materials which contribute to this waste. And here in this bar graph, we can see the breakdown of which type is responsible for how many percent. As you can see, the leading contributor is food and green. Food is like leftovers, something that we haven't eaten that we are getting rid of. And green is, for example, branches of trees or flowers. That would be green. So food and green is 44%. Now, how can we express this idea? How can we present this idea? Well, there are a few ways to do this. Food and green accounted for 44% of the total. Accounted for, very good, very useful for these situations when we're talking about a part out of the total. Next option is made up. Food green made up 44% of the total. We can use the word constituted. Food and green constituted 44%. We can also use food and green were responsible for 44%. Another way to present this information is by using the word contribute. It's a verb. We can use this word as a noun. In that case, it would be a contributor. So food green was the major contributor of waste. So please pay attention to the prepositions. Accounted for, made up, and no other preposition. Constituted, no preposition. Were responsible for. Next, we're going to talk about this pie chart in detail. So what is this pie chart even about? This chart shows distribution of global corn production in 2019-2020. So basically we can see the countries which produced the largest amounts of corn. Now at the screen you can see the report. So the first paragraph is the introduction, and as always it consists of two elements, the paraphrase and the overview. The overview is 2-3 key features, and here we have two countries, two leading countries, the United States and China. You can see that there are two body paragraphs. So what is the logic between having these two paragraphs? Well, if you look at the pie chart, you will see that there are three major contributing countries, which is USA, China, and other. So in our first paragraph, we will talk about the leading countries. And in the second body paragraph, the remaining countries. Let's talk about the introduction. Here, when I was paraphrasing the topic, instead of shows, I have used the word illustrates. This pie chart talks about contribution of several countries. So we are talking about countries. If you happen to have this in your graph, then this is how you can put it in your introduction, broken down by country. So broken down by country means the data is analyzed by country. And that's really so. We have several countries and percentages corresponding to each country. So we can say broken down by country or differentiated by country. In the overview, which is only one sentence here, I have used the word dominated. Dominated is a verb, and the meaning is clear. It means that United States and China were the leaders. So they dominated the global corn supply in those years. The graph is about production of corn in this case. So let's talk about the synonyms of the word production. So first of all, there are several options of using the verb produce. We can say corn was produced or produced corn. We can also make a noun, the production, and we can, for example, say the total production. Okay. Another possible way, and actually the synonym of the word produce, is supply. So we can say corn was supplied or supplied corn. Again, we can use the word supply as a noun. Another way to put this information is to use the word provide. It is also a verb. So we can say corn was provided or provided corn. Another possible way to talk about production is manufacture. Manufacture is a verb, and we can use it when we talk about some large-scale production with machines. We are not going to use this word in this report because corn is grown, cultivated, and it's not manufactured. But in other graphs, you can totally use the word manufacture. So talking about grow and cultivate, we are going to use them in this graph because, like I said, corn is grown and cultivated. Now at the screen you can see different synonyms that we have just discussed. So the pie chart illustrates corn production. USA and China dominated the global corn supply. A quarter of all supplied corn. These two regions provided more than half of all corn. The verb provided is used. Here we have used the word was grown in its passive form. Was cultivated. So cultivated and grown are synonyms. I have also used the word producer to convey the idea of production. So thus making it the fourth largest corn producer globally. We're talking about Brazil. While Argentina's portion of produced corn was less. So produced corn. And finally, India's and Mexico's shares of the total corn production. Yet another way, another variation of paraphrasing. Let's talk about the first body paragraph, which describes the leading countries. As you probably know, one of the criteria of assessment, your report, is coherence and cohesion. So this element is responsible for 25% of your score. Coherence and cohesion is all about logic, organizing, the flow and structure of your report. If you want to make your paragraph more coherent, more cohesive, you can use these tools over here. So you can use the word follow. We have discussed it in one of our previous lessons. You can also make more structured and connected sentences by using the word which. It's a very good way. I definitely recommend you to include it in your reports. And of course, another way to link sentences and link parts of the sentences together is to use prepositions like this or this grain, these two regions. We refer to the USA and China that we mentioned before. These grain, in this case, of course, we refer to corn. So please remember that linking devices, linking phrases, linking words are very important. In the final body paragraph, I have also highlighted different ways of how you can write linked and logical sentences. And I would like to talk to you about commenting. Now, what is commenting? So when you're writing a report, of course, you need to write about numbers, percentages, years. So you have to mention specific details. But simply mentioning numbers, years, or percentages is not enough. You need to show the ability to provide relevant comparisons. This is important for task achievement. And task achievement is actually one of 4 assessment criteria. So one of the ways to make these relevant comparisons is by commenting. And here in this paragraph, I have highlighted 2 ways of how you can make this commenting. So almost a tenth of all corn was cultivated in Brazil. Yeah, you mentioned a piece of information and then you kind of give a comment on this previous piece of information. You say, thus making it the 4th largest corn producer globally. This is one of the ways. Another way is by using which. So again, you mentioned some information. India's and Mexico's shares amounted to this number and this number, which was almost twice as much as that of South Africa. So you mention information and you comment on this information. So if you use these structures, not only will you write coherent and connected sentences, but also you will produce grammatically complex sentences. So these structures are really good and I really recommend you to pay attention to them. So talking about comparisons, like I said, one of your tasks is to provide relevant and appropriate comparisons. And now I have highlighted different ways of how I actually made these comparisons in this report. I've used the word dominated. We have talked about this word in one of the previous lessons. I have also used this one of the ranking tools, the 4th largest corn producer globally. I have used this little grammar structure, the comparison degree, less, and which was almost twice as much as that. We have also talked about it when we were talking about how to make comparisons. So again, make comparisons where appropriate. This will definitely increase the quality of your report. Here I would like to recap all of this vocabulary that we have discussed and how I have used it in this pie chart. Next, we're moving on to the second graph, and it's a multiple graph. We have already started talking about the bar chart. As you remember, it's about the share in municipal solid waste generated worldwide by material type. We also have a table here, and the table features regions with highest average daily per person waste generation in kilograms. So we have 4 regions here, with North America leading. Again, first I would like to draw your attention to this vocabulary. This vocabulary is the focus of this lesson. This vocabulary is really, really handy and useful if you are talking about parts of the total. So if you don't know these words, do practice them, do study the examples. They are really, really handy. And in this report, I have highlighted the words that I have used. So I have used percentage, the majority, share, proportion, and significant portion to refer to parts. I have also used these words in purple: responsible for, contributor, accounted for, constituted, were responsible for, and made up. As you can see, I have used pretty much all the synonyms that I knew. Why? Because I wanted to show that I'm really flexible in my vocabulary, because, you know, I want a high score, and I guess you also do want a high score. So use the synonyms. And when I was referring to the number, I used the word 3/4. Let's have a look at the introductory paragraph. As I was paraphrasing the topic, I have used the word details. It's a verb in this case. And depicts. Again, it's a verb. So instead of show, you can use words details, depicts, and you can use a number of other introductory verbs. You can see them here. So show, of course, list if you are talking about rankings, for example, represent, for example, this statistic represents. If you are talking about some kind of analysis, as we are actually doing here, you can use the phrase represent the breakdown of something. This statistic represents the breakdown of waste. Detail as a verb is another option. We have talked about it. And of course, compare. Next, let's have a look at the first body paragraph, which describes the bar chart. You have already heard it from me many times that you really need to show your ability to select most important information and to group information. If we analyze this bar chart, we will see that 4 out of 8 materials were responsible for 87% of the total. 87, that's like a huge portion. So food and grain, paper and cardboard, plastic, and other made up 87%. And because it's a huge portion, also a big portion of the paragraph is devoted to these leading materials. The remaining materials, metal, glass, rubber and leather, and wood, they only made up 13 of the total. So for them, I only have one little sentence at the end of the paragraph. And talking about grouping information, I have grouped all of these 4 materials in one sentence using the word respectively. So do remember that you need to show your ability to select information and to group information. Finally, let's have a look at the last paragraph, which is about the table. I have used the word ranked second when I was talking about Europe and Central Asia. Again, we have talked about these different ways of presenting rankings in one of the previous lessons. And again, I want to draw your attention to this very, very useful word that you can use in your reports, amounted to. And its synonyms: was or stood at when you present figures. This table over here is about per person generation. And pretty often in writing task 1, IELTS academic, you will have to talk about per person generation or per person consumption. So something which is done per person. So I would like to talk to you about different ways of presenting this information. So first of all, you can use the phrase per person, and you can use it in these two different ways. So waste generation in Europe per person was, or as an adjective, per person waste generation in Europe was. Alternatively, you can say average amount of 222 was produced per person in the USA. Another way to convey this information is to use this term, per capita. This is very common for statistics. It's actually a Latin phrase. Capita refers to a head. So like per capita means per head or per person. And this is how you can use this phrase, per capita, in sentences. And finally, you can use these ways. So a person produced, or a person generated, a person spent. And here are two examples. So the average person living in the USA produced 222 kg, or the average US citizen generated 221 kg. So again, you have a few ways to present this information and to show your lexical variety. Here I have highlighted different ways of referring to per person generation. So guys, now you know how to refer to parts of the total. You know a lot of vocabulary to do this. You also know how to write about per capita consumption or production or expenditure. And here we're finishing this lesson. In our next video, we will talk about surveys and groups. This will be our skill 6. So let's meet up there.